Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to another Battle for Azeroth video. Today we're going to be talking about the Enhancement Shaman and all of the changes that have been going on throughout the Battle for Azeroth Alpha. Obviously, before we get into this video, I want to let you guys know that this is just the Alpha. Things can change, but I thought it'd be cool to walk through all the baseline abilities that have changed for the Enhancement Shaman, talk about which ones were added, which ones were changed a little bit, and then also talk about the talent system, which was pretty heavily reworked for the Enhancement Shaman. I think that they've had some pretty significant changes, and today's the day we're going to be going over that. As you can see by the Shaman, you can tell that I have Earth Shield and Lightning Shield active. We're going to get into that in just a little bit, but what we're going to do is walk through the baseline abilities, and then we'll talk about the talents. Okay, so just diving straight into it, we have the baseline abilities. The first one is going to be Tremor Totem, which is back for I think all Shaman specs, but Tremor Totem is a really big deal for PvP. Basically, it means that Shamans can counter Warlocks and Shadow Priests and their fear abilities very well, but in Mythic Dungeons, there are a lot more CC abilities that will be coming from trash packs, from bosses in general, and having Tremor Totem is an extra bit of utility that Shamans now have. And specifically the Enhancement Shaman, it is a 1 minute cooldown, lasts for 10 seconds, removing Fear, Charm, and Sleep CCs from your whole party within 30 yards. Really big deal for PvP, and it's actually removed a couple expansions ago. And then we have Capacitor Totem, which is now baseline for the Enhancement Shaman, but it was nerfed a little bit. Okay, so you can still put that Capacitor Totem down, and after 2 seconds it will explode, but it only stuns for 3 seconds as opposed to 5 seconds. It has a 1 minute cooldown and is a 35-yard range. It does have the opportunity to reduce its cooldown with a talent that I'll get into in a little bit, but it is important to know that this is now a baseline. Stormlash was actually removed, so Stormlash, for everyone that didn't play Enhancement Shaman, would just give your raid an overall damage increase. Basically, the more you attacked, you would actually buff your party members or your raid members with a little bit of a damage increase. It wasn't a whole lot, but that was actually removed entirely, and so was Empowered Stormlash, so just keep that in mind. And Stormbringer was changed in a way as well, which is a pretty big deal actually. It really does change a lot of the rotation, in my opinion, and adds a lot of efficiency. Stormbringer still does the same thing, but instead of a 50% Maelstrom discount off of Storm Strike, it now costs 0 Maelstrom and triggers no cooldown. So that's really important to note. It's just a small detail, but it does actually mean a lot. It means that, like, if you do get a Storm Strike proc but you don't have any Maelstrom, you wouldn't be able to use it before, but now you can actually make sure you get that because it does not cost anything with that Stormbringer proc. And last but not least, another small detail but an important one is that your Rockbiter, your Flame Tongue, and also your Frostbrand has a 20-yard range instead of a 10-yard range from last expansion. So you do have a little bit of ranged capability in there. You are able to hit targets from a pretty large yard range, but also, like, Storm Strike still has melee range and Lava Lash is still melee range. This is really important though, because this means, like, classes that are kiting you in, like, arena or whatever, you can hit them from 20 yards away. Like, that's pretty good. That's pretty, like, a large range. I'm surprised they even added this, because I expected them to kind of reduce the whole ranged melee class type thing quite a lot, since they've done that to a couple of interrupts in PvP and whatnot for Battle for Azeroth. But now that it's a 20-yard range on all these attacks, you're going to be able to stick on those ranged targets pretty significantly better with that 20-yard range. So definitely good to note. And now we're going to move into the talents. That's it for the baseline abilities. The talents are where the real meat, in my opinion, is for this rework. We have quite a significant amount of changes, and I'm not going to talk about the ones that really have changed. I'll mention them, but not really going to go over them too much. We have Landslide, which has changed quite a significant amount, actually. Rockbiter still enhances your weapon, but it increases your fire, frost, and nature damage increased by 10% for 10 seconds, as opposed to 8% agility. So you're not getting, like, physical damage increase, you're getting fire, frost, and nature damage, which will buff your Frostband, obviously, your Flame Tongue, and also your Storm Strike, which is a really big deal, right? So you're going to get that overall damage increase, but your auto attacks won't hit as hard. Hot Hand does the exact same. Not really going to talk much about that. We have Totem Mastery, which is actually being added to the Enhancement Shaman spec. This was in the Elemental Shaman spec, but now it extends into the Enhancement Shaman spec. It does pretty similar stuff. Generates Maelstrom. You know, you place Totem down. You get 4 totems. It lasts for 2 minutes. It's spammable. Not really a big deal. It increases Lava Lash damage, increases your chance to trigger Wind Fury, and also increases the damage of your Storm Strike. Not really a huge change, but it is now available. We have the 30 tier, which is a really, really, really big change. Okay, so this is going to be like your defensive slash utility one. There's another one down to 75. I'll get into that in a little bit, but there's a lot of defensives here. And as you can see, Spirit Wolf is now a talent. Whenever you're transformed into Ghost Wolf, you're going to gain 5% increased movement speed and 5% damage reduction every 1 second, stacking up to 4 times. This is a mechanic in Legion, but it is now available for you as a talent in Enhancement Shaman. And competing with that is Earthshield, which is a really big surprise for a lot of people. All specs of Shaman actually have Earthshield as a talent, and it lasts for 9 charges. It heals you every time you're hit. It can only be placed on 1 target at a time. It doesn't have to be placed on yourself, and it's also spammable, which is a big deal. Does not reduce damage taken, and it has 9 charges, and on top of that is purgeable now. It is not an unpurgeable buff anymore. It is now a magic shield, and this is a big deal. It's almost like the Burning Crusade version of Earthshield, and it's back. I think a lot of players, especially in the PvP community, are going to be happy about this because Earthshield was just such a big problem for a lot of people. Just having like an instant passive damage reduction that was almost spammable was a really, really big deal for a lot of players, especially me as like an arcane mage who focuses on single target damage. Earthshield would always be something that stopped us from doing a huge amount of single target damage. So probably an overall nerf for like Shaman players, but the fact that you can have this is really cool, and especially as enhancement and elemental. And competing with that, we have Static Charge, which reduces the cooldown of Capacitor Totem by 5 seconds each time an enemy is stunned. So that means if you stun 4 enemies, you get 20% reduced cooldown on that Capacitor Totem, but only up to 20 seconds, okay? And next up, we have the 45 tier, which is completely changed. This is kind of like an extra damage, like a passive damage tier. So Flame Tongue will now cause a 6-second dot that burns a target for fire damage, a pretty significant amount too. Good single target damage. And we have Hailstorm, which Frostbrand actually gets a little bit more enhanced weapon damage as well. It allows your weapon to basically deal an extra amount of frost damage. I don't know which one of these is better. This depends on the numbers, which will be determined once the game comes out. And then we have Lightning Shield, which is on that tier as well, which is an hour buff. Chance to deal nature damage for people that hit you. It's nice to see that this is actually back, and you have a significant amount of buffs that you have to keep up. Like you have to keep Lightning Shield up, you have to keep Earth Shield up, and it's nice to see that kind of class fantasy come back in a lot of ways. I know that Lightning Shield was available in Legion, but Earth Shield wasn't. So seeing this kind of there, I don't know if you'll ever use Lightning Shield in like raiding or Mythic Plus or anything like that, but seeing it there is still pretty cool because that's kind of been an iconic Shaman ability for quite a long time. In the 60 tier, we have Boulder Fist, which was moved from the 100 tier, replaced by Elemental Spirits, which I'll get into in a second. But Boulder Fist is now available as a passive damage increase on the 60 tier. It does not compete with Ascendance or Earthen Spike. Really big deal. A lot of people are probably going to be choosing this. It competes with Overcharge, which does pretty much the same thing. And we have a Wind Fury Totem available for the Enhancement Shamans as well. Wind Fury Totem is interesting because it basically does what it does in Legion. Like it enhances the next 20 auto attacks of allies within 20 yards, dealing an additional amount of physical damage. It's a 1-minute cooldown though, and this is interesting because since it's a 1-minute cooldown, and if there's like 20 people in a mythic raid, like 20 auto attack is going to go very quickly. So, and it's not going to do a whole lot of increased damage. So I just don't know if people are going to choose Wind Fury Totem over Boulder Fist. Boulder Fist seems like the obvious choice here because of how good it is. But it's nice to see that more totems are being added back to Shamans, and maybe this will be good in some scenario. I just don't know when that scenario will be. Moving on from that, we have kind of a utility tier slash defensive. We have Ancestral Guidance, which is being returned to the Enhancement Shaman. This was a huge deal in MOP. Basically what people do at Mists of Pandaria as an Enhancement Shaman, they would use their Ascendance, they would use all their damage cooldowns and Ancestral Guidance on top of that, and they would do an insane amount of damage with their Ascendance Sith Lord type burst damage with Ancestral Guidance, and it would heal them in a huge amount. But this works a lot like the Shadow Priest Vampiric Embrace, where you're able to heal, or for the amount of damage you do, 20% of that damage is converted into healing for yourself and up to 3 nearby injured party members. Really big deal. Awesome utility. Probably going to be used a lot in arena if there's the need for it, but competing with that is Feral Lunge, which is a huge amount of mobility, and also we have Windrush Totem as well, which is also a huge amount of mobility. But it's nice to see that all of these are competing and all of these are useful, and a lot of people will probably be changing in between these as like their situations unfold. Moving on from that, we have the 90 tier, which is Crashing Storm, Fury of Air, and Sundering. There's actually nothing different at all in this tier, so I'm not really going to talk about it, but it's pretty much the exact same. And then on the 100 tier, we have Elemental Spirits, which is the only change at all. Elemental Spirits is a brand new talent, and how it works is your Feral Spirits will be randomly imbued with fire, frost, or lightning damage, increasing or enhancing your abilities, right? This is very similar to Roll the Bones from the Outlaw Rogue spec. So when you use your elemental spirits, like they could be 2 fire wolves, like you'll know right away because you get 2 buffs basically. So I'll just show you straight up. Like if you pop out your spirit wolves, your feral spirits, you immediately get 2 different types of wolves or 2 of the same types of wolves. Molten Weapon buffs your Lava Lash somehow. That's not quite finished. And then we have Crackling Surge, which reduces the cooldown of Stormstrike by 50% and the Maelstrom cost of Stormstrike by 50%. So that's a really big change. Basically makes your feral spirits just insanely good. And I don't know if that's going to be better than Earthen Spike, because Earthen Spike still provides 30% extra nature and physical damage for 10 seconds on a 20-second cooldown. That's still a very good ability, and I don't know if like which one is going to be better, but it is interesting to see. Elemental Spirits, I could see people definitely getting frustrated with the RNG that's involved with this ability for sure, because if you get, you know, say the frost enhancement is the worst one, and you get 2 frost wolves, I can see a lot of shamans being mad about that. Or if you get like a lightning and a fire, that's probably the better one, right? Because that'll probably do the more damage. But it is interesting to see this and see a little bit more of an RNG available talent. I just don't know if this is going to beat out Earthen Spike or Ascendance. So just something to keep in mind. And that does pretty much sum up the talents and the baseline abilities overview for the Enhancement Shaman. What I'm going to do now, guys, is show you a few minutes of the leveling footage of this class just to see what the rotation looks like. I think that this is an extremely complex class. It's probably one of the more complex classes out of the entire Battle for Azeroth Alpha for all of the different classes, but it does seem very rewarding. It seems like there's a lot of utility available to this. I mean, there's a lot of damage abilities and the rotation, which is not very like weird for an Enhancement Shaman. It's always kind of been that way, but you know, this class is definitely very complex in a lot of ways. If you're a beginner, I can see a lot of people struggling with this one and being optimal with this class compared to like Demon Hunter or Arms Warrior or something like that, which is a little bit more simple. But there is a lot going on with this class. There's a lot to do with it, and there's a lot of skill cap to it. So I'm happy about that. I think the changes are pretty good. So guys, we're going to jump into some leveling footage, and I will see you at the end of the video. All right, guys, that does sum up today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you did enjoy, be sure to hit a big thumbs up on this video, show some support for the channel. And you can also leave a comment down below with what your thoughts are on the Enhancement Shaman and how it's been changing in Battle for Azeroth Alpha. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to hit subscribe and keep up to date with all the BFA videos that are coming out. I've done a lot of class overviews, and I will continue doing so. I just moved into my new apartment, so I had to take a couple days off, but we've been going really ham on this channel, and I really do appreciate all the support you guys have been giving me. So thank you guys, and I'll see you all tomorrow.